In 509 BC, Rome experienced a decisive political transformation that ended the centuries-long monarchy. The last king, Tarquin the Proud, was removed from power due to documented abuses of authority and consolidation of monarchical control that threatened the emerging aristocratic class. The expulsion of Tarquin was followed by the establishment of a republican government with two annually elected consuls, who jointly exercised executive, military, and judicial authority. The consulship was intentionally designed to prevent the concentration of power in a single individual, reflecting a deliberate institutional response to the monarchy's overreach. The new government retained the Senate, a body composed exclusively of patricians. The Senate functioned as an advisory and legislative organ with considerable influence over foreign policy, military commands, and fiscal decisions. Although initially advisory, the Senate's authority increased as the Republic matured, establishing the precedent that political stability in Rome required both executive administration and aristocratic oversight. The early Republic immediately faced social and political tension between patricians, who controlled most political offices and landholdings, and plebeians, who lacked formal representation. This tension manifested in repeated conflicts over access to political offices, legal protections, and land rights. In response, the office of tribune of the plebs was established during the early decades of the Republic. Tribunes were endowed with veto powers over actions by magistrates and laws passed by the Senate that threatened plebeian interests. This institutional innovation marked the first formal mechanism through which Rome's commoners could assert political influence. During the first decades of the Republic, Rome's military organization relied on a citizen-soldier system drawn from property-owning classes. Soldiers provided their own arms and equipment, serving in legions that combined infantry with supporting cavalry from wealthier classes. Military campaigns during this period focused on consolidating control over Latium, securing Roman allies, and defending against incursions from the Etruscan cities to the north and other neighboring tribes. These campaigns, documented in contemporary annalistic records, were essential for stabilizing Rome's immediate environment and establishing the Republic as a regional power. The political landscape was shaped by repeated plebeian demands for legal transparency and protection. While consuls exercised executive authority, their decisions were increasingly scrutinized by tribunes. Disputes over legal rights led to early codification efforts and the recognition of formal mechanisms for redress. The Roman political system during this period reflected a balance between aristocratic control and emerging popular influence, a structure designed to prevent domination by either class while maintaining military and civic stability. Rome's early foreign engagements were both defensive and expansionist. Military records show campaigns against neighboring cities in Latium and against the Etruscan League. Rome relied on alliances with local Latin towns, often formalized through treaties and mutual defense pacts, to secure borders and project influence. The city's ability to sustain prolonged campaigns was supported by its emerging network of roads, fortifications, and fortified colonies, which functioned both as supply centers and as instruments of political control. During this period, the consular office was exercised alternately by members of prominent patrician families. Each consul held imperium, the authority to command armies and enforce civil order. Military campaigns were meticulously recorded in annalistic traditions, noting victories, territorial acquisitions, and the establishment of colonies. Such records demonstrate the Republic's dual emphasis on military competence and civic accountability, as consuls were held responsible by the Senate and, indirectly, by the tribunes of the plebs. The creation of tribunes marked a pivotal shift in Roman governance. Tribunes could convene the concilium plebis, the assembly of plebeians, to propose resolutions and exercise veto power over magistrates' actions. This office institutionalized a mechanism through which Rome's lower classes could influence legislation and protect communal interests. Tribunes were sacrosanct, and any action against them was strictly forbidden, reflecting the Republic's early commitment to codified rights and structured opposition within government. Rome's economy during the early Republic remained predominantly agrarian. Land ownership was concentrated among patricians, while plebeians cultivated smaller plots and contributed to military service. Land disputes frequently influenced political developments, and the Senate intervened in allocating public lands to maintain social order. These allocations often coincided with military campaigns, as conquered territories were distributed among soldiers and allies, reinforcing Rome's military and political cohesion. Legal reforms during this period were gradual but significant. Early codification efforts preceded the formal 12 tables, with annalistic sources documenting tribunician proposals to limit patrician abuses and clarify obligations of citizens. These reforms reflected an understanding that sustainable governance required transparency, accountability, and equitable access to law. Early Republican institutions demonstrated that Rome's political structure prioritized balance between aristocratic oversight and popular rights, while simultaneously enabling effective governance and military preparedness. The early Republic also developed its system of magistracies beyond the consulship and tribunes, including quaestors, aediles, and censors, each with defined roles in administration, finance, and public oversight. Censors, in particular, were responsible for conducting the census, regulating public morality, and overseeing financial assessments, further institutionalizing the Republic's mechanisms of civic management. These offices complemented the consulship and the tribunes, creating a layered structure designed to prevent the concentration of power and maintain accountability. Religiously, the early Republic maintained traditional Roman rites, but priestly offices such as pontiffs and augurs were closely integrated into the political system. These offices were occupied primarily by patricians and functioned as a regulatory body for public rituals and omens, reflecting the interconnection between political authority, military legitimacy, and religious observance in Rome's governance. Historical records indicate that magistrates frequently consulted augurs before military campaigns and civic decisions, ensuring that public actions were formally sanctioned within accepted practices. By 449 BC, the Republic had stabilized its core political institutions despite recurring social tensions. The consulship, senate, and tribunate had established precedents for governance that balanced executive authority, aristocratic oversight, and plebeian protection. Military campaigns had secured Rome's immediate territory in Latium, and early legal reforms laid the groundwork for future codification. By 449 BC, Rome had stabilized its initial republican structures, but the patrician-plebeian divide remained unresolved. The early republic confronted a fundamental problem. Legal procedures and customary rights were largely controlled by patricians, leaving plebeians vulnerable to arbitrary decisions. The need for codified law became urgent, and the creation of a publicly accessible legal framework became a defining objective of this period. Around 451 to 450 BC, the Decemviri Legibus Scribundis, a commission of 10 officials, was appointed to codify Roman law. This commission, drawn from prominent patrician families, undertook the systematic recording of legal norms, producing what would later be recognized as the 12 Tables. The 12 Tables represented Rome's first formal, written codification of law, covering civil, criminal, and procedural matters. Surviving fragments and references in later Roman legal commentaries confirm their contents. Provisions addressed property rights, debt, family law, inheritance, and criminal penalties. The 12 Tables formalized previously oral customary law, ensuring uniform enforcement and establishing legal protections for plebeians. Public posting of these laws in the Forum Romanum allowed citizens to consult them directly, limiting the arbitrariness of magistrates and providing a foundation for subsequent legislative developments. This codification marked a major shift from patrician-controlled legal practices to a system in which legal knowledge was accessible and enforceable. The 12 Tables also established clear procedures for debt enforcement, property disputes, and contractual obligations, creating predictable legal remedies. They defined the responsibilities of heirs, guardians, and family heads, formalized inheritance laws, and addressed both private and public offenses. While penalties were often severe, the codification ensured that sanctions were consistently applied rather than subject to personal discretion. The legal framework extended to both patricians and plebeians, representing a measured balance within the social hierarchy of the Republic. During this period, Rome's political structure continued to evolve. The consulship remained the highest executive office, with 2 consuls elected annually. Consuls commanded armies, presided over assemblies, and executed judicial decisions. They were increasingly accountable to the Senate and, indirectly, to the tribunes of the plebs. The Senate retained authority over fiscal matters, diplomatic decisions, and provincial oversight, while the tribunes represented plebeian interests, possessing the power to veto magistrates' actions that contravened plebeian rights. Military operations continued to consolidate Roman influence in central Italy. Campaigns against neighboring Latin cities, Volsci, Equi, and Sabines are documented in annalistic sources. These campaigns secured Roman borders, ensured compliance of allies. The ongoing struggle of the orders intensified as plebeians sought greater access to political offices and legal protection. Tribunes of the plebs, established in the early Republic, became central instruments for enforcing plebeian rights. They convened the Concilium Plebis, an assembly of plebeians that could pass plebiscites. Initially, plebiscites applied only to plebeians, but precedents set during this period established their eventual binding authority over all citizens, laying the foundation for broader legal integration. The period also saw the introduction of other magistracies beyond the consuls and tribunes. The quaestorship regulated public finances, the aedileship managed urban maintenance and games, and the censorship, though initially less frequent, became critical for conducting the census, regulating citizen roles, and supervising moral conduct. The interplay among these offices formalized administrative responsibilities, delineated authority, and provided institutional checks that mitigated the concentration of power. The Licinian Section laws of 367 BC codified major plebeian gains. These laws allowed plebeians to hold one of the consulships, required debt limitations to prevent abusive creditor practices, and mandated public distribution of land. The legislation addressed long-standing social and economic disparities between classes. Consulship eligibility for plebeians marked a turning point in Roman politics, establishing the principle of shared governance and signaling the Republic's capacity to accommodate institutional reform in response to persistent social pressure. During this period, Rome's military structure adapted to sustained campaigns. Citizen soldiers continued to form the backbone of the army, while allied contingents provided additional manpower. Campaigns employed a combination of traditional infantry phalanx formations and emerging manipular organization, which allowed greater flexibility in terrain typical of central Italy. Documented victories over Latin and Sabine cities, including military operations to suppress revolts, enhanced Rome's strategic position and secured internal stability. Economic administration during this period involved the allocation of public lands, particularly ager publicus, to both plebeians and allied communities. Land distribution reinforced loyalty, mitigated social unrest, and facilitated recruitment for military campaigns. These allocations were documented in Senate records and public inscriptions, demonstrating the Republic's systematic approach to resource management in support of both military and civic needs. Political mechanisms introduced during this era were designed to regulate conflicts between social orders without undermining Republican authority. Tribunes exercised veto power to block unconstitutional acts by magistrates, while assemblies codified the plebeians' legal gains. Senate decrees established frameworks for tax obligations, military levies, and legal adjudication. Codified law and institutional checks combined to create a stable system of governance capable of managing both internal disputes and external threats. Rome's engagement with neighboring Latin and Volscian communities included the formation of formal alliances and treaties. These agreements, documented in inscriptions and annalistic sources, defined military obligations, political representation, and mutual rights. Colonies were founded at strategic locations to secure conquered territories, maintain lines of communication, and support military operations. The careful balance of military presence and legal integration exemplifies the Republic's approach to consolidating authority in early expansion. By 367 BC, Rome had formalized core legal, political, and military structures that would endure throughout the Republic. Codification of law, institutionalization of plebeian representation, and adaptation of military organization allowed Rome to maintain stability amid social tension. Plebeians had secured meaningful political influence, legal transparency had increased, and the Senate retained its advisory and legislative authority. These developments established precedents for subsequent reforms and military expansion, ensuring continuity of governance and preparation for future regional dominance. By 367 BC, Rome had formalized core republican structures, codified essential laws, and granted plebeians access to the consulship under the Licinian Sextian reforms. These reforms marked the beginning of a period in which Rome not only consolidated political stability internally, but also undertook sustained military operations across central and southern Italy. Over the next century, Rome engaged in continuous campaigns against neighboring peoples and cities, gradually extending its authority over the Italian peninsula. This period reflects a combination of administrative consolidation and military expansion, fully documented in annalistic sources, inscriptions, and contemporary records. The early campaigns focused on the Volsci, Equi, Etruscans, and Samnites, all of whom maintained established territories in central and southern Italy. The Volsci and Equi had repeatedly opposed Rome during the early Republic, as recorded in the Annals of Livy. Military operations in this period emphasized strategic occupation of key territories, establishment of fortified colonies, and suppression of revolts among subjugated towns. Rome's approach combined direct military engagement with alliances formalized through treaties specifying obligations, tribute, and mutual defense. The consistent use of documented treaties demonstrates Rome's methodical approach to territorial integration. The Samnite Wars were the primary military and strategic challenge of this period. The First Samnite War, 343 to 341 BC, is recorded as a direct response to Roman intervention in Campania, following requests from the city of Capua, which sought protection against Samnite encroachment. Rome mobilized legions and allied forces to confront Samnite armies. Engagements during this war demonstrated the Republic's growing capacity for coordinated multi-front operations and revealed the flexibility of Roman military organization. Military developments included the adaptation of the Manipular Legion, which replaced the rigid phalanx formations. The Manipular system divided soldiers into units of variable depth and composition, allowing greater maneuverability on the rugged terrain of central and southern Italy. These organizational innovations are attested in Polybius and Livy, who note that tactical flexibility enabled Roman forces to sustain campaigns across extended periods and varied topography. The manipulation of legion formations enhanced Rome's ability to maintain control over newly acquired territories while minimizing exposure to enemy counterattacks. Colonial foundations became a central tool for consolidating territorial gains. Rome systematically established colonies in strategic locations, particularly in areas bordering hostile populations. Colonies served multiple purposes, securing communication routes, projecting Roman authority, providing logistical support for ongoing campaigns, and integrating local populations into the Roman administrative framework. Inscriptions and contemporary records indicate that colonies were staffed with Roman citizens and allies who held military and civic responsibilities, reinforcing political stability and operational readiness. The Second Samnite War, 326 to 304 BC, reflected both the resilience of the Samnites and Rome's persistent expansionist policy. Sources document repeated engagements, including the notable battle at the Caudine Forks, 321 BC, where Roman forces suffered a tactical encirclement. Historical records confirm the subsequent diplomatic resolutions and reorganizations, including negotiated withdrawals and adherence to stipulated terms. Despite temporary setbacks, Rome recovered militarily and strategically, ultimately consolidating authority over Campania and adjacent territories. Concurrent campaigns against the Etruscans reinforced Rome's northern boundaries. Rome's approach combined direct military action with negotiated treaties to incorporate Etruscan cities into the Republic's political orbit. Records indicate that Rome systematically imposed tributes and established garrisons to ensure compliance, while allowing local municipal structures to persist under Roman oversight. These arrangements permitted Rome to extend influence without necessitating permanent occupation in all cases, demonstrating administrative efficiency documented in both Livian accounts and archaeological evidence. Rome's engagement with the Latin League during this period also contributed to territorial consolidation. Initially composed of allied Latin cities, the League occasionally resisted Roman domination. Rome's military campaigns enforced compliance while integrating Latin allies into the republican system through standardized obligations of military service, fiscal contribution, and participation in consular decisions related to joint defense. The League's eventual absorption into Roman political structures reflects the Republic's capacity to convert temporary alliances into permanent, institutionalized governance arrangements. Economic and logistical management underpinned military success. Public lands, ager publicus, were distributed to Roman citizens, particularly settlers in newly established colonies, to support both agricultural production and recruitment for military campaigns. Detailed records demonstrate careful allocation of resources, balancing fiscal revenue with operational sustainability. In parallel, road networks such as early segments of the Via Latina were expanded to facilitate troop movement and supply transport, providing enduring infrastructure for military and civil administration. Rome's military campaigns were coordinated with legislative oversight. Consuls directed operations, while the Senate approved troop levies, authorized campaigns, and controlled wartime finances. Tribunes and plebeian assemblies. During this period, Rome also conducted operations against smaller independent communities in Campania, Lucania, and the coastal regions of southern Italy. These campaigns, systematically documented, reinforced Roman control over supply lines, coastal access, and trade routes. Integration of subjugated communities involved both military oversight and formal inclusion in the political military alliance network, ensuring that local populations contributed to collective defense and fiscal stability. Administrative consolidation accompanied military expansion. Colonies were governed by appointed magistrates with defined responsibilities for justice, resource allocation, and troop management. Civic structures mirrored those of Rome, establishing consistency in legal, fiscal, and administrative procedures across newly incorporated territories. This standardization facilitated long-term governance and is corroborated by epigraphic evidence demonstrating Roman legal and military presence in key locations. By 264 BC, Rome had achieved hegemony over the Italian peninsula, unifying Latin cities, Etruscan towns, Samnite communities, and allied populations under a combination of treaties, military oversight, and civic integration. The republican system had matured, combining a codified legal framework, a professionalized consular and senatorial oversight, and a flexible military capable of sustaining campaigns across multiple theaters. The Republic's expansion was systematic, consistent, and institutionally supported, reflecting a deliberate strategy of consolidation rather than episodic conquest. Socially, the period from 367 to 264 BC was marked by continuing negotiation between patricians and plebeians. Tribunes and plebeian assemblies monitored consular adherence to law and public obligations. Legal reforms, while limited in scope, gradually increased plebeian participation in governance and ensured that newly conquered territories were incorporated into the Republic without undermining existing social and administrative structures. Analytic sources note repeated interventions to maintain order, demonstrating the institutional capacity to manage expansion while preventing disruption to civil stability. Military documentation indicates that campaigns were conducted in annual cycles, with consular armies deployed sequentially or simultaneously, depending on the theater of operations. Reports of engagements, sieges, and territorial acquisition were systematically recorded, creating a continuous historical record that allowed the Senate to assess performance and plan subsequent operations. Roman military efficiency during this period laid the foundation for overseas expansion in later centuries, as logistical coordination, strategic deployment, and administrative control over conquered territories became increasingly sophisticated. By 264 BC, Rome had consolidated control over the Italian peninsula and had established institutions capable of supporting sustained military campaigns. The Republic's growing political stability, legal codification, and administrative structures enabled it to project power beyond Italy. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BC, represented Rome's initial confrontation with Carthage, a major maritime power, over control of strategic territories in Sicily and influence over Western Mediterranean trade routes. Contemporary records, including Polybius and fragments of Livy, document the war's chronology, campaigns, and outcomes with precision. The conflict began with Roman intervention in the city of Messana, modern Messina, where Mamertine mercenaries requested assistance against Syracuse. Carthage had long maintained a presence in western Sicily, with fortified settlements and naval control, and perceived Roman involvement as a threat to its strategic and economic interests. Rome's decision to commit legions to Sicily initiated the first large-scale overseas military operation in the Republic's history. Deployment records confirm that Roman consular armies crossed to Sicily with logistical preparation, carrying sufficient equipment, provisions, and siege engines to sustain extended campaigns. Rome's early operations in Sicily encountered military and logistical challenges. Unlike previous campaigns within Italy, Sicily required coordination between land and naval forces. Roman records indicate that initial engagements focused on securing coastal positions, fortifying captured towns, and preventing Carthaginian reinforcements from consolidating. The Republic's army relied on citizen soldiers organized in manipular legions, supplemented by allied contingents, while Carthage deployed professional forces supported by its fleet. The scale and complexity of these operations were unprecedented for Rome. By 260 BC, Rome recognized that naval capability was essential to sustain the campaign. The Republic undertook a rapid naval construction program, creating a fleet capable of challenging Carthage's maritime dominance. Roman sources describe the introduction of the corvus boarding device, which allowed infantry to engage enemy ships in hand-to-hand combat, compensating for initial inexperience in naval warfare. The corvus transformed engagements into primarily infantry-based encounters, enabling Roman forces to secure victories at sea despite Carthage's superior naval experience. Naval campaigns in this period included documented engagements at Mylae, 260 BC, and Ecnomus, 256 BC. At Mylae, Consul Gaius Duilius commanded the newly constructed fleet, achieving Rome's first significant naval victory. At Ecnomus, one of the largest naval battles in ancient history, Roman and allied forces successfully intercepted Carthaginian forces attempting to transport troops from Africa to Sicily. Contemporary records detail the organization of fleets, the coordination between consular commands, and the sequence of maneuvers that led to Roman success. Land operations progressed concurrently with naval campaigns. Rome established fortified positions in eastern Sicily and conducted sieges against Carthaginian strongholds, including Panormus, modern Palermo. Annalistic accounts note careful planning, supply line management, and deployment of siege engines, including towers and battering devices. Roman forces relied on disciplined formations, systematic encirclement, and fortification of captured positions, demonstrating an ability to sustain multi-year campaigns far from the Italian mainland. Carthaginian responses included reinforcement of coastal cities, naval expeditions, and attempts to incite local alliances against Rome. Historical records confirm that Carthage sought to retain control over western Sicily and maintain trade access across the Mediterranean. Engagements were documented annually, with consular reports detailing territorial gains, losses, and strategic adjustments. Rome's methodical recording of campaigns ensured accountability and facilitated planning for subsequent operations. By 255 to 254 BC, Rome undertook operations on the North African coast, attempting to strike Carthage directly. Sources document the landing of consular forces near Aspis, modern Calabria, Tunisia, conducting limited engagements before returning to Sicily. Although the expedition did not decisively end Carthaginian resistance, it demonstrated Rome's ability to transport and supply large forces over considerable maritime distances, an unprecedented logistical accomplishment for the Republic. The First Punic War extended over 2 decades, with alternating successes and setbacks for both powers. Engagements were systematically recorded, including the siege of Lilybaeum, modern Marsala, which lasted nearly a decade. Roman forces implemented continuous operations, constructing siege fortifications, maintaining blockades, and conducting patrols to prevent Carthaginian resupply. The protracted nature of these operations reflects documented strategic persistence rather than episodic military action. By 242 to 241 BC, the conflict reached a critical stage. Carthage faced financial strain and internal political pressure to resolve the protracted war. Rome, having sustained fleet losses and personnel attrition, maintained pressure on Sicilian strongholds and blockaded key ports. Contemporary records indicate that both sides conducted negotiations leading to the war's conclusion, formally documented in treaties specifying territorial adjustments, tribute, and indemnities. The Treaty of Lutatius, 241 BC, ended the First Punic War. Rome acquired Sicily as its first province, establishing a precedent for provincial administration outside Italy. The province was organized with appointed magistrates, taxation mechanisms, and oversight of local civic structures. Sicily's incorporation reflects the Republic's capacity to extend governance beyond the Italian peninsula while maintaining military and administrative control. Carthage retained territories in North Africa and Sardinia temporarily, but ceded strategic influence over the western Mediterranean trade routes. The treaty's provisions are documented in Polybius and corroborated by inscriptions and annalistic accounts. Rome's success in Sicily initiated a broader phase of Mediterranean expansion. The Republic began systematically organizing provinces, ensuring that military occupation, fiscal collection, and local administration adhered to standardized practices. Colonies and fortified positions secured transport routes and supply lines, supporting long-term presence in overseas territories. Military and administrative documentation from this period confirms the establishment of permanent garrisons, tax records, and consular oversight of provincial operations. The economic implications of expansion were significant. Sicily's agricultural output, particularly grain, was integrated into the Roman supply system. Tribute payments were recorded, providing fiscal support for both provincial administration and continued military operations. Records also detail logistical arrangements for provisioning Roman legions abroad, ensuring operational continuity across multiple theaters of conflict. These documented systems reflected a sophisticated approach to resource management and territorial control. Socially, the prolonged campaigns required adaptation of Rome's citizen-soldier system. Consular levies drew heavily on landowning citizens, supplemented by allied contingents. By 218 BC, Rome had consolidated its gains in Sicily, secured its position in the central Mediterranean, and established the administrative mechanisms required for governing overseas territories. The Republic's legal, fiscal, and military structures had adapted to support provincial administration, demonstrating both institutional resilience and strategic foresight. Sicily remained the first Roman province, with appointed magistrates and organized tribute systems, forming a model for subsequent provincial integration. The period from 264 to 218 BC represents Rome's first systematic projection of power beyond Italy, achieved through sustained military campaigns, naval innovation, and administrative integration. Contemporary records document each campaign, engagement, and treaty with precision, providing a verifiable historical foundation. Rome's operations during this period exemplify a deliberate, institutionally supported strategy for expansion, laying the groundwork for subsequent confrontations with Carthage and other Mediterranean powers. By the conclusion of the First Punic War, the Republic had demonstrated the capacity to sustain extended overseas campaigns, maintain logistical and administrative control over conquered territories, and integrate provincial resources into the Roman economic and military system. Sicily's integration as a province marked a turning point in Roman governance, transitioning from regional hegemony in Italy to systematic engagement with the wider Mediterranean world, fully documented in annalistic, epigraphic, and historical sources. In 218 BC, the Roman Republic confronted one of its most significant military challenges in documented history: the invasion of Italy by Hannibal Barca, general of Carthage. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BC, arose from unresolved territorial disputes following the First Punic War and Carthaginian expansion into Iberia. Contemporary sources, including Polybius, Livy, and later epigraphic evidence, document the sequence of campaigns, military organization, and administrative responses with precision, providing a fully verifiable historical account of the Republic's conduct during this period. The war began in Iberia, where Carthage had consolidated control over key settlements and silver mining regions. Rome's ally, Saguntum, situated south of the Ebro River, requested protection against Carthaginian encroachment. In 219 BC, Hannibal besieged and captured Saguntum after a protracted engagement. Annalistic records indicate the siege lasted several months, employing siege engines, earthworks, and systematic assault tactics. Roman reaction included consular mobilization, declarations of war, and preparation for transalpine military operations. Hannibal's strategic initiative involved crossing the Alps into northern Italy with a multinational army composed of Carthaginian, Gallic, Iberian, and Numidian contingents. Sources record that the crossing, completed in late 218 BC, entailed careful logistical planning, including the transportation of cavalry, elephants, and supplies through challenging mountainous terrain. While Rome anticipated Carthaginian attacks from the south, Hannibal's advance into northern Italy demonstrated the Republic's need to adapt military strategy to unprecedented conditions. The first major engagements of the campaign in Italy included the Battle of the Trebia, 218 BC. Roman consuls assembled legions and allied forces to confront Hannibal's army. Contemporary accounts describe the deployment of manipular formations, the positioning of cavalry, and the coordination of allied contingents. Hannibal achieved tactical success by exploiting the terrain and timing, inflicting heavy losses on Roman forces. Detailed reports document troop numbers, movements, and logistical considerations, highlighting the Republic's capacity for rapid mobilization and systematic battlefield organization despite the outcome. In 217 BC, the Battle of Lake Trasimene further tested Roman military adaptation. Hannibal executed a well-coordinated ambush along the northern shore of the lake. Annalistic records provide precise accounts of the sequence of attacks, Roman formations, and casualties. Despite the defeat, Rome maintained operational continuity, raising new legions, coordinating consular commands, and fortifying strategic locations in central Italy. These measures reflect an institutional resilience documented consistently in historical sources. The campaign reached a critical stage in 216 BC at the Battle of Cannae. Hannibal's forces encircled a numerically superior Roman army, resulting in significant losses. Contemporary records detail the composition of legions, positioning of manipular units, deployment of cavalry, and sequence of encirclement maneuvers. The defeat necessitated Roman strategic reorganization rather than territorial concession. The Senate coordinated replacement of lost legions. Consuls conducted rapid recruitment, and allied contingents were mobilized to maintain defense of key towns. Records indicate no systemic collapse of republican governance despite battlefield losses. Rome responded to the Carthaginian incursion through a combination of defensive strategy in Italy and offensive operations in Iberia and North Africa. The Republic dispatched consular and proconsular armies to Hispania, targeting Carthaginian strongholds, supply lines, and political allies. Polybius documents systematic sieges, fortification of Roman positions, and coordination with local tribes opposed to Carthaginian control. Military records specify troop numbers, logistical planning, and deployment timelines, reflecting Rome's ability to conduct simultaneous campaigns across multiple theaters. In 211 to 210 BC, Rome intensified operations in Iberia under Publius and Gnaeus Cornelius Scipio. Historical accounts document successive engagements against Carthaginian garrisons, capturing key cities such as New Carthage, Cartagena. These operations deprived Hannibal of reinforcements and supplies while consolidating Roman influence in the region. Coordination between consular commands, naval support, and logistical resupply exemplified Rome's administrative and operational sophistication. The decisive phase of the war occurred under the command of Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus, appointed proconsul in 205 BC. Scipio launched a campaign in North Africa, documented as beginning with troop mobilization in Sicily and maritime transport to the Carthaginian coast. Roman forces conducted systematic reconnaissance, established fortified camps, and engaged Carthaginian field armies, adhering to established military procedures and the chain of command. In 202 BC, Scipio confronted Hannibal at the Battle of Zama, where Roman manipular legions, supported by Numidian cavalry under Massinissa, achieved a decisive victory. Detailed sources record formations, sequencing of attacks, and logistical deployment, confirming Roman procedural efficiency and tactical innovation. Following Zama, the Republic enforced terms documented in the treaty with Carthage, 201 BC. Carthage surrendered all territories outside Africa, ceded its navy with exceptions, agreed to indemnities, and submitted to limitations on military activity. Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica remained under Roman influence, and Africa was demilitarized according to treaty stipulations. These arrangements are attested in Polybius and later inscriptions, providing a verifiable record of the Republic's consolidation of Western Mediterranean authority. The Second Punic War resulted in substantial territorial and political gains for Rome. Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica were formally incorporated under provincial administration, with magistrates assigned to governance, taxation, and military oversight. The war prompted refinements in administrative practices, including the establishment of provincial governors, codified revenue systems, and regulated troop deployments. Historical documentation indicates that Rome maintained rigorous record-keeping, consistent legal procedures, and accountability structures to ensure sustainable governance over newly acquired regions. Military reforms during the war enhanced the Republic's operational capacity. Legionary structure, training, and battlefield coordination evolved in response to Hannibal's tactics. Deployment of flexible manipular formations, integration of allied contingents, and coordinated use of cavalry enabled sustained campaigns across diverse terrains, documented in consular reports and annalistic sources. The Roman army's adaptability during the war provided the foundation for the Republic's subsequent expansion throughout the Mediterranean. Economically, the war imposed extensive demands on Roman resources. Annual conscription, supply logistics, and provisioning of troops required systematic taxation, redistribution of agricultural surplus, and maintenance of public infrastructure, including roads and ports. Contemporary records specify allocations for siege engines, naval construction, and troop sustenance, reflecting meticulous administration. Sicily's grain production was integrated into Roman supply chains, and tribute payments from conquered territories contributed to funding ongoing campaigns. By 201 BC, Rome had secured primary Western Mediterranean dominance. The Republic's strategic capacity included simultaneous campaigns in Italy, Iberia, and North Africa, coordinated consular commands, and robust logistical systems. Provincial governance, established military procedures, and treaty enforcement ensured that territorial acquisitions were consolidated effectively. Annalistic and epigraphic records confirm the establishment of administrative structures in newly acquired regions, with formal mechanisms for revenue collection, local governance, and military oversight. The Second Punic War also demonstrated the Republic's institutional resilience. Despite catastrophic defeats at Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae, Rome's political and contemporary records specify organization, troop numbers, and deployment cycles, ensuring adherence to republican legal frameworks. This period demonstrates that military necessity prompted refinement of existing structures rather than the creation of ad hoc or extra-legal measures. By the end of 201 BC, the Republic had established the institutional, military, and administrative framework to govern overseas territories, sustain long-term campaigns, and manage the integration of conquered populations. The combination of strategic planning, codified procedures, logistical competence, and provincial administration ensured that Rome could project power efficiently and maintain internal governance. Contemporary sources document the careful sequencing of consular commands, legislative oversight, and administrative appointments, providing a continuous and verifiable historical record. The Second Punic War represents a period of demonstrated operational efficiency, territorial consolidation, and institutional maturation. Rome's military reforms, administrative procedures, and treaty enforcement provided the foundation for sustained Mediterranean expansion. Historical records, including Polybius, Livy, and inscriptions, confirmed the Republic's ability to coordinate simultaneous operations across multiple theaters, integrate provincial territories, and maintain political and fiscal stability under extreme military pressure. Following the conclusion of the Second Punic War in 201 BC, Rome entered a period of strategic expansion across the eastern Mediterranean. The Republic's military and administrative systems, refined during decades of Italian consolidation and the Punic conflicts, enabled systematic campaigns against the Hellenistic states of Macedonia, the Seleucid Empire, and the Greek city-states. Contemporary sources, including Polybius, Livy, and inscriptions, provide detailed accounts of campaigns, treaties, and administrative arrangements, allowing a precise reconstruction of events without reliance on legend or myth. The Republic's engagement in the Eastern Mediterranean began with the Macedonian Wars. The First Macedonian War, 214 to 205 BC, occurred concurrently with the Second Punic War as Philip V of Macedon allied with Hannibal. Rome dispatched limited forces and coordinated with allies in the Aegean to contain Macedonian influence. Records document consular campaigns in Illyria, naval operations in the Adriatic, and coordinated defense of allied Greek states. The war concluded with the Treaty of Phoenix, 205 BC, defining territorial boundaries and influence, as documented in Polybius, establishing Rome's initial framework for engagement in the region. Following Hannibal's defeat, Rome renewed its focus on the eastern Mediterranean. The Second Macedonian War, 200 to 197 BC, arose from Philip V's expansion into Thessaly and support for anti-Roman factions among Greek city-states. Rome mobilized legions under consular command and allied forces drawn from Pergamum, Rhodes, and other Aegean states. Campaigns involved coordinated movements across Epirus, Thessaly, and Macedonia, with documented sieges, field engagements, and logistical preparations. Polybius provides detailed accounts of battles, including the Battle of Cynocephaly, 197 BC, where Roman manipular legions defeated the Macedonian phalanx, demonstrating tactical flexibility and operational superiority. The victory at Cynocephaly marked a decisive shift in the balance of power in Greece. Rome imposed the freedom of the Greek states as a formal policy, codified in treaties and ratified by local assemblies. Macedonia retained internal governance, but was restricted in military expansion and tribute collection. These arrangements, documented in inscriptions and consular reports, reflect Rome's methodical approach to controlling strategic regions while maintaining nominal local autonomy. Simultaneously, Rome engaged the Seleucid Empire under Antiochus III. Following alliances with anti-Roman Greek states and incursions into Asia Minor, Antiochus' forces encountered Roman armies in 192 BC. The Roman consular campaigns, supported by allied navies and regional militias, advanced into Asia Minor, conducting sieges, securing supply lines, and engaging Seleucid forces at Thermopylae and Magnesia ad Sipylum, 190 BC. Polybius documents troop numbers, consular coordination, and deployment sequences, confirming precise operational planning and execution. The Treaty of Apamea, 188 BC, formalized the conclusion of the Roman-Seleucid conflict. Antiochus surrendered territories north of the Taurus Mountains, ceded war elephants, and agreed to indemnities payable over 15 years. The treaty allowed Rome to control strategic coastal regions without permanent occupation while ensuring Seleucid compliance through monitored military limitations. Documentation confirms administrative oversight mechanisms, including allied intermediaries and consular supervision of treaty implementation. Rome's eastern expansion continued with engagement in Greece and the Hellenistic city-states. Following Macedonian and Seleucid campaigns, the Republic deployed garrisons, established alliances, and enforced fiscal arrangements in key cities, including Corinth, Thebes, and Athens. Local civic structures remained largely intact, with Rome imposing tribute, regulating military obligations, and supervising political alignments. Inscriptions and annalistic records indicate consistent oversight without direct annexation, reflecting strategic control through influence rather than permanent territorial administration. The Third Macedonian War, 171 to 168 BC, arose from continued tensions between Rome and Macedonia under Perseus. Roman consular armies, supported by allied contingents from Pergamum and Rhodes, conducted campaigns across Thessaly and northern Macedonia. Polybius records detailed sequences of siege operations, field engagements, and the coordination of infantry and cavalry. The decisive encounter at Pydna, 168 BC, resulted in a Roman victory, with the Macedonian phalanx defeated by the Manipular legion's flexible formations. Documentation specifies troop deployments, casualty numbers, and logistical arrangements, demonstrating methodical Roman operational planning. Following Pydna, Macedonia was divided into 4 client republics, each required to provide tribute and restrict military capacity. Roman oversight included consular monitoring and standardized fiscal procedures, ensuring compliance without direct occupation of all territories. The arrangement is fully documented in contemporary sources and inscriptions, exemplifying Rome's approach to extending influence through administrative and military control rather than full provincial annexation. The final consolidation of Roman authority in the eastern Mediterranean occurred with the destruction of Carthage and Corinth in 146 BC, events marking the end of large-scale, independent resistance. During the Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BC, Rome laid siege to Carthage, employing systematic blockade and artillery deployment, as recorded in Polybius and annalistic sources. Carthage was captured, and the city was formally dismantled. The territory was incorporated as the province of Africa. Simultaneously, Corinth was besieged and destroyed following Roman intervention against anti-Roman factions, establishing the province of Macedonia. These operations demonstrate a combination of military precision, administrative planning, and integration into provincial systems. The Republic's administrative framework expanded in this period to accommodate provinces in Africa, Greece, and Asia Minor. Governors, praetors, propraetors, consuls were appointed to manage taxation, enforce treaties, and oversee garrisons. Revenue systems, documented in inscriptions and official records, provided for military expenditures, provincial maintenance, and Rome's fiscal stability. Roads, fortified positions, and urban oversight structures ensured that territories remained under effective Roman supervision without continuous consular presence in every locality. Military reforms accompanied Eastern expansion. Legions retained manipular organization while integrating lessons from engagements with Macedonian phalanxes and Seleucid forces. Cavalry coordination, artillery deployment, and siegecraft were refined and applied systematically across campaigns. Recruitment of allied contingents, including Pergamese, Rhodian, and local Greek forces, supplemented Roman legions and reflected a documented strategy of force multiplication and operational efficiency. The period from 200 to 146 BC also saw a transformation in Rome's fiscal and logistical capabilities. Tribute from provinces, managed through standardized taxation and documented in public records, financed long-term military deployments. Sicily, Africa, Macedonia, and Asia Minor contributed resources to maintain armies, supply garrisons, and fund naval operations. Annalistic records confirm careful oversight of expenditures, procurement of materials, and coordination with provincial administrators, ensuring continuity of operations across distant theaters. By 146 BC, Rome had secured dominance over Greece, Macedonia, and North Africa, extending its authority across the eastern and western Mediterranean. The Republic's territorial holdings were managed through a combination of provinces, client states, and alliances, each supervised by appointed magistrates. Military garrisons ensured stability, while legal and fiscal mechanisms integrated conquered populations into the broader republican system. All arrangements are attested in inscriptions, consular reports, and contemporary historical narratives. The social and political implications of Eastern expansion were significant. Control over newly acquired territories increased wealth among the senatorial and equestrian classes, reinforced the influence of consular offices, and contributed to the concentration of resources in Rome. While provincial governance remained documented and structured, the influx of wealth and administration of distant territories laid the groundwork for social and political pressures that would intensify in subsequent decades. In 133 BC, the tribune Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus introduced formal proposals for land redistribution, documented in the Lex Sempronia Agraria. These proposals aimed to enforce limits on the amount of public land, ager publicus, that any individual could occupy and redistribute excess holdings to landless citizens. Records indicate that Tiberius brought the bill directly before the plebeian council, bypassing the Senate's prior deliberation, a procedural shift documented in contemporary accounts. The legislation, passed by a majority vote, resulted in administrative appointments for land redistribution overseen by appointed commissioners, Decemberi agris distribuendis. Resistance emerged among the senatorial class, whose holdings were subject to redistribution. Accounts confirm that disputes over enforcement led to procedural and political confrontation. Tiberius was killed in 133 BC during unrest following a controversial re-election attempt for tribune, an event recorded in annalistic sources without attribution of motive or psychological interpretation. His death highlighted vulnerabilities in republican enforcement mechanisms and the capacity for political violence to resolve legal disputes. Following Tiberius, his brother Gaius Gracchus, tribune from 123 to 121 BC, pursued a series of legal and administrative reforms. Contemporary sources document legislation addressing grain distribution, judicial processes, and provincial administration. Gaius introduced measures that regulated the price and distribution of grain to citizens, codified provincial governance by creating courts for the trials of governors, and established colonies for landless citizens. Enforcement mechanisms included oversight by commissions appointed through the plebeian council and monitored by magistrates. Gaius's legislative program resulted in significant tension with the senatorial elite, culminating in his death in 121 BC during an armed confrontation with state forces, as recorded in annalistic sources. These events are presented in historical documentation as procedural outcomes of political conflict and enforcement measures rather than an interpretation of communal psychology. The documented consequences included the repeal or modification of specific laws, administrative restructuring, and reinforcement of republican mechanisms for addressing civil unrest. Concurrent with social and legislative conflicts, Rome underwent significant military reforms. By the late 2nd century BC, the Republic's reliance on land-owning citizen soldiers became increasingly impractical due to population constraints and the demands of prolonged campaigns abroad. Documentation indicates that Gaius Marius, elected consul multiple times beginning in 107 BC, restructured recruitment standards, allowing landless citizens, capitancy, to enlist in legions. These reforms are documented in inscriptions, military records, and annalistic accounts. Marius's reforms included reorganization of the legion into cohort-based units, standardization of equipment and training, and formalized enlistment contracts guaranteeing veterans land upon discharge. Contemporary records specify that cohorts consisted of approximately 480 soldiers, combining manipular structure with increased tactical flexibility. Training and discipline were codified under consular oversight, ensuring operational consistency and enhancing the Republic's capacity to project military power. The professionalization of the army produced systemic effects on Republican governance. Documentation confirms that soldiers' loyalty increasingly aligned with their commanding generals rather than the Senate, as generals controlled recruitment, provisioning, and veterans' rewards. Annalistic sources record subsequent political mobilization of armies under influential commanders, establishing a precedent for military intervention in civil disputes without direct legislative sanction. These developments are recorded factually, without interpretive attribution to motives or collective psychology. During the same period, documented campaigns in Cisalpine and Transalpine Gaul, Hispania, and Africa demonstrated the operational impact of these reforms. Roman forces engaged in multi-year sieges, counterinsurgency operations, and field engagements, including documented campaigns against Germanic tribes along the Po River, Iberian confederacies, and Numidian factions in Africa. Consular and proconsular reports detail troop movements, supply logistics, and tactical deployment, confirming procedural rigor in military operations. The period also witnessed documented political responses to social unrest and military reform. The Senate, tribunes, and assemblies enacted legislation addressing land distribution, veterans' entitlements, and recruitment procedures. Contemporary records provide specific accounts of debates, votes, and implementation measures, illustrating the Republic's structured mechanisms for addressing tensions arising from social and military transformations. The conflict between populares and optimates during this period is preserved in contemporary sources as procedural and institutional interactions. Actions taken by tribunes, consuls, and the Senate are recorded with reference to laws, decrees, and enforcement measures. Episodes of violence, such as the deaths of the Gracchi and associated disturbances, are documented factually as outcomes of enforcement and political confrontation rather than interpreted as expressions of societal psychology or collective motive. Marius's military reforms were applied systematically during campaigns against Jugurtha in Numidia, 112 to 105 BC, documented in annalistic and epigraphic sources. Roman legions, composed of professional soldiers, conducted sieges, forced marches, and coordinated assaults against fortified positions. Logistics, recruitment, and deployment were monitored through consular oversight, with recorded sequences of troop movements, supply chain management, and engagement outcomes. The campaigns demonstrated the operational effectiveness of cohort organization, training, and professional command structures. In parallel, internal social conflicts persisted. Tensions over land redistribution, veteran settlement, and fiscal obligations continued to provoke legislation and political maneuvering. Sources document measures such as the assignment of colonial lands, the regulation of provincial revenue, and the enforcement of grain distribution without interpretation of communal sentiment. Enforcement relied on magistrates, commissions, and Senate decrees, ensuring that responses remained procedural and documented. Between 188 BC, documented military campaigns expanded into Transalpine Gaul, Cisalpine Gaul, and the eastern provinces. Professional legions under consular and proconsular commands conducted coordinated campaigns, integrating allied contingents and employing logistical frameworks refined under Marius's reforms. Polybius and later sources record troop numbers, supply lines, and engagement outcomes with precision, confirming operational continuity and administrative oversight. The period also included documented reforms of voting assemblies, judicial procedures, and provincial governance. Tribunes and consuls introduced laws regulating the election of magistrates, the administration of justice, and the oversight of governors. Implementation included codified procedures for appeals, audits, and enforcement measures. Contemporary sources record these reforms as legal and administrative adjustments rather than expressions of social psychology. The structural impact of these developments was significant. Professionalized legions enhanced Rome's capacity for sustained campaigns abroad, while documented administrative reforms ensured fiscal and legal oversight. Analytic and epigraphic evidence demonstrates the continuity of republican governance mechanisms, even as social tensions and military reforms created new pressures on political structures. By 88 BC, the Republic had fully integrated military professionalization, social legislation, and provincial administration into its institutional framework. Recorded events, including legislative enactments, consular commands, and military deployments, illustrate a complex but verifiable sequence of adjustments that enabled Rome to sustain operations across multiple theaters while maintaining republican structures. These measures are documented in surviving inscriptions, consular reports, and analytic sources, providing a continuous, verifiable account. The period from 88 to 49 BC in the Roman Republic is documented as a phase of civil conflict, constitutional disruption, and the gradual erosion of republican norms. Contemporary sources, including Plutarch, Appian, and Sallust, as well as epigraphic records, provide detailed accounts of military campaigns, political decrees, and constitutional changes, enabling reconstruction of events with precision without reliance on legend, hearsay, or interpretive analysis. The crisis began in 88 BC when the tribune Lucius Cornelius Sulla was elected consul and assigned the command. Following the victory, Sulla instituted proscriptions, 82 to 81 BC, a formalized system of listing political enemies for execution and confiscation of property. Analytic and epigraphic evidence confirm that proscriptions were recorded with names, offices, and property designations. Administration involved appointed officials overseeing the execution of lists, legal documentation of confiscated assets, and the transfer of estates to supporters of Sulla's faction. The system was implemented as a procedural mechanism to consolidate authority and redistribute property according to documented legal processes, without interpretive narrative regarding motives. Sulla's constitutional reforms were formally enacted in 82 to 79 BC. These included the reorganization of the Senate, expansion of senatorial membership, regulation of tribunes' powers, and codification of magistracy succession. Records document specific decrees assigning authority, enumerating members, and defining procedural limitations. Enforcement was achieved through consular oversight and formal decrees, providing verifiable evidence of systemic alteration of republican structures. Upon resigning the dictatorship in 79 BC, Sulla retired from active politics, establishing a precedent for the voluntary withdrawal of extraordinary power. Contemporary sources record the formal restoration of civic offices and consular elections, confirming procedural continuity. The Republic remained governed by established magistracies, though Sulla's reforms institutionalized the Senate's authority and constrained popular tribunes, setting conditions for subsequent political contention. Despite Sulla's reforms, political instability persisted. In 73 to 71 BC, the rebellion led by Spartacus in southern Italy exposed structural vulnerabilities in military command and provincial oversight. Contemporary accounts, including Plutarch and Appian, detail mobilization of consular and proconsular legions, operational deployment across multiple theaters, and strategic coordination with allied contingents. The suppression of the revolt was conducted under Marcus Licinius Crassus and Pompey, with documentation of troop movements, sieges, and engagements, demonstrating adherence to procedural military command. During the following decades, the Republic experienced further concentration of military authority among prominent generals, documented in the careers of Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar. Records of commands in Spain, Gaul, and Asia Minor illustrate consistent consular assignment, recruitment, and provincial administration. Generals maintained control over legions, logistical operations, and provincial revenues, consistent with procedures documented in epigraphic and literary sources, enabling sustained campaigns and consolidating power bases independent of the Senate. In 60 BC, the formation of the First Triumvirate, Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, is documented in annalistic sources as a formalized arrangement to coordinate political and military objectives. The alliance operated through joint agreements to influence elections, legislation, and provincial assignments. Official decrees, Senate records, and inscriptions confirm the procedural execution of policies without reliance on legend. This alliance circumvented standard republican processes for coordination among magistrates, illustrating a shift in governance enforced through documented political mechanisms rather than informal practice. The crossing of the Rubicon by Julius Caesar in 49 BC represents the culmination of structural and procedural tension within the Republic. Contemporary records document the mobilization of legions, logistical preparation, and formal deployment across the Rubicon River, constituting an act of legally documented insurrection. Following the crossing, Caesar advanced into Italy, engaging Pompeian forces in recorded battles at Dyrrhachium, Pharsalus, and other strategic locations, with consular and senatorial authorities displaced or co-opted. Tactical movements, supply chain management, and recruitment are detailed in primary sources, confirming operational procedures and continuity of military command. By 49 BC, the Republic's institutions had been subordinated to extraordinary military authority. Documentation records that consular elections, Senate decrees, and provincial administration continued nominally, but were directed or overridden by commanding generals. Legal instruments, formal decrees, and recorded consular actions demonstrate procedural adherence, though ultimate authority resided with military commanders controlling legions. The erosion of normative republican constraints during this period is fully documented in literary and epigraphic sources, confirming continuity of record while demonstrating structural vulnerability. Throughout 88 to 49 BC, the Republic maintained administrative mechanisms despite repeated civil wars. Treasury records, provincial accounts, and consular decrees illustrate the continuous operation of taxation, provincial oversight, and civic administration. Military campaigns were systematically recorded, with troop numbers, supply allocations, and garrison assignments documented. Legislative processes continued under modified conditions, including extraordinary consular or dictatorial authority, ensuring procedural continuity without reliance on myth or interpretive narrative. The period also demonstrates the interaction between military authority and political institutions. Assignments of commands, enactment of prescriptions, reorganization of Senate membership, and formation of alliances are documented through formal decrees, inscriptions, and consular records. Recruitment of professional legions under individual generals' control is recorded with procedural precision, showing a shift in operational loyalty from Senate-directed command to general-directed command structures. This transformation is fully documented, providing a factual basis for understanding the structural erosion of Republican norms. By 49 BC, the Republic had experienced systematic weakening of traditional political constraints, documented in the repeated intervention of armies in civil governance, the enactment of extraordinary legal decrees, and the centralization of authority under leading generals. Operations across Italy, Hispania, and other provinces were conducted under consular and proconsular authority modified by military dominance, confirming adherence to procedural structures while demonstrating the functional subordination of republican mechanisms to military necessity. The period from 49 to 27 BC marks the final phase of the Roman Republic, characterized by documented military campaigns, political realignments, and constitutional transformations that culminated in the formal establishment of the Roman Empire under Octavian, later Augustus. Contemporary sources, including Caesar's Commentarii de Bello Gallico and de Bello Civili, Suetonius' biographies, Appian's Roman history, and inscriptions, provide detailed accounts of legislative actions, military engagements, and administrative changes. These sources allow a precise reconstruction of events without reliance on legend, hearsay, or interpretation of motives. In 49 BC, Julius Caesar, following the completion of campaigns in Gaul and the formal conclusion of his governorship, crossed the Rubicon River with legions under his command. Contemporary records document the deployment of his forces, logistical preparations, and the legal implications of this action, which constituted a formal insurrection under Republican law. Caesar's crossing initiated a sequence of military campaigns aimed at neutralizing political opposition led by Pompey and the senatorial faction controlling Rome. Upon entering Italy, Caesar advanced systematically, capturing key towns and strategic positions. Documentation specifies troop movements, garrison assignments, and supply chain operations. Pompey, commanding the senatorial forces, withdrew from Italy, consolidating armies in southern Italy and subsequently in Greece. Records of consular and proconsular commands confirm that Caesar's operations followed documented military procedures, including siege tactics, coordinated marches, and provincial administration of occupied territories. Caesar engaged Pompeian forces in multiple campaigns in Hispania Ulterior, Greece, and Macedonia. The Battle of Dyrrhachium, 48 BC, is recorded as a carefully executed confrontation involving troop positioning, fortification lines, and supply management. Although the engagement resulted in strategic setbacks for Caesar, the documented retreat and regrouping maintained operational integrity. Subsequent maneuvers led to the decisive Battle of Pharsalus, 48 BC, where Caesar's legions, documented in contemporary sources, defeated Pompey's numerically superior forces through coordinated manipular deployment, disciplined infantry, and effective cavalry operations. Following Pharsalus, Pompey fled to Egypt, where he was assassinated upon arrival. Documentation from contemporary historians and inscriptions confirms the sequence of events, including the political arrangement between Egyptian authorities and Pompeian exiles, the formal notification to Rome, and subsequent administrative adjustments. Caesar arrived in Egypt later in 48 BC and intervened to resolve local dynastic disputes, documented in consular dispatches and epigraphic records, resulting in the installation of Ptolemy XIII and Cleopatra VII as co-rulers under Roman oversight. After consolidating authority in Egypt, Caesar engaged in campaigns in the eastern Mediterranean. Military operations included documented engagements in Pontus, Asia Minor, and the Levant, ensuring the suppression of remaining Pompeian loyalists and stabilizing client states. Strategic records indicate systematic deployment of legions, supply logistics, and administrative supervision of captured territories. The campaigns reinforced Caesar's authority and extended Republican influence over eastern provinces under his command. In 46 BC, Caesar returned to Italy and conducted campaigns in Africa against the remaining Pompeian forces, particularly under Metellus Scipio and King Juba I of Numidia. In 44 BC, Julius Caesar was appointed Dictator Perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity. Contemporary sources, including Suetonius and Appian, document the legal and procedural formalities surrounding this appointment, including senatorial ratification and public proclamation. Caesar initiated administrative and legislative reforms, including the reorganization of municipal governance, the adjustment of calendar systems, and oversight of provincial administration. Official records confirm the implementation of these measures without reliance on narrative conjecture. The assassination of Caesar on the Ides of March 44 BC, executed by a documented group of senators, including Brutus and Cassius, is recorded with procedural details. Locations, timing, and execution of formal legal processes were systematically noted in contemporary sources. The resulting political vacuum prompted a reorganization of alliances and the formation of the Second Triumvirate in 43 BC, composed of Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, documented through formal senatorial decrees and legal instruments. The Second Triumvirate was granted extraordinary powers, Lex Titia, 43 BC, for 5 years, documented in epigraphic and legislative records. Their mandate included authority to enact prescriptions, levy troops, and govern provinces. The documented prescriptions resulted in the execution of opponents, confiscation of estates, and redistribution of resources, implemented through official administrative channels without interpretation of motives. The Triumvirate mobilized forces to confront the assassins of Caesar and consolidate control over Italy, Gaul, and the eastern provinces. The decisive campaigns of the Second Triumvirate included the Battle of Philippi, 42 BC, in Macedonia, where forces under Octavian and Antony defeated Brutus and Cassius. Contemporary accounts document troop numbers, battlefield deployment, and coordination among legions. The documented outcome included surrender, execution, and incorporation of the remaining Pompeian forces into Roman administrative oversight. Provinces previously aligned with Republican opponents were brought under direct control of triumviral authorities, with consular and proconsular appointments formalized in records. Following Philippi, internal tensions among the triumvirs escalated. Octavian's consolidation of authority in the west, Antony's focus on the east, and Lepidus' marginalization are documented in consular records, correspondence, and provincial dispatches. Octavian assumed control of Italian provinces, enacted fiscal and administrative reforms, and prepared for operations in Gaul and Hispania. Antony administered the eastern provinces, managing revenues, garrisons, and client states. Lepidus' diminished role was formally recorded in senatorial decrees and military assignments. The conflict between Octavian and Antony culminated in the Battle of Actium, 31 BC, documented with precision regarding fleet composition, naval deployment, and coordinated movements. Antony and Cleopatra's defeat is recorded in epigraphic and literary sources, leading to their deaths in 30 BC. Octavian assumed formal control over Egypt, integrating it as a Roman province under imperial administration, with documented appointments of governors and financial officers overseeing revenue and garrisons. By 27 BC, Octavian's consolidation of power across the former republic was complete. The Senate formally conferred upon him the title Augustus, along with proconsular authority over key provinces and military commands documented in legislative records. Administrative, fiscal, and military oversight was reorganized under his authority, marking the formal transition from republican governance to imperial structures. Provinces were administered through appointed governors, legions were stationed under centralized command, and legal and fiscal systems were standardized, all confirmed in inscriptions, official decrees, and annalistic sources. During 49 to 27 BC, the Republic's institutional mechanisms, senatorial oversight, consular elections, and provincial administration, were progressively subordinated to military authority and extraordinary political mandates. Documentation demonstrates that military campaigns, administrative appointments, and fiscal management were conducted according to procedural norms, even as the Republic's structural integrity eroded. Legal instruments, consular records, and epigraphic evidence provide a continuous account of the transition from republican governance to a centralized imperial administration. The period also illustrates the operational integration of provinces, military logistics, and urban governance. Legions were deployed across multiple theaters with documented chains of command, supply arrangements, and recruitment records. Provincial governors administered cities, collected taxes, and maintained garrisons under formal instructions. Documentation confirms continuity of administrative and military processes despite the extraordinary concentration of political authority in a single individual.